Here I am again, after how many weeks? At least 3 weeks after our marathon in Vienna. So it's always a little bit tricky if I have to work on air if I'm alone and have no technical support, and here I am. Today it's a very tricky subject, and therefore I am also quite nervous, so I hope I can get on track and take you along this story about viruses and the immunology as such. So in the beginning, I would like to show you a very short video.
How did they get the plant inside? That is the question. Let's see how many people can figure out what came first, the cube or the plant.
What came first, the cube or the plant? And this is, I think, a very good beginning to my topic, because if you go back in history and if you go back into the history of immunology, in the end it's always about the questions, what is the cause of what? So until today we still have a lot of problems to answer these questions, and there are a lot of answers to this one question: what is the only cause of something? So I want to go a little bit into my history of vaccinations, because vaccination is the topic, and you may be astonished, or I was astonished, when my dear friend Arne digged out my papers about vaccinations when I was a child. I mean, I had vaccines, you can't believe it. Before I go into this, I only wanted to tell you that vaccination is already a very old topic. Already the Chinese, around between 1000 and 1500 after Christ, were doing some kind of vaccine against smallpox. They scratched skin or made a sort of a grinding materials of the smallpox and blew it into the nostrils or under the skin. So this is vaccination. You try to initiate an immune response. And already around 900 after Christ, a Persian scientist discovered the measles and the smallpox. So, and then we have all these histories of epidemics. We call it epidemics, not pandemics, because the world was not like today connected. So this history is old, and it's not Jenner, the first one with the cowpox, who kicked off the vaccination story of the Western world. So my topic is actually not vaccination as such. I only wanted to use it as an entry, like I was looking into my papers. I had diphtheria and tetanus. I mean, I don't know how many times. It started half a year after my birth. This was in 56, in June. Then I was again, the so-called refresh was made 6 weeks around later. So we do approximately the same, I think, today, that we vaccinate. What do we do with this? I think it's a lot about this. Then I had diphtheria and tetanus. Every year again, poliomyelitis. And I had, of course, pox, the one you had to swallow. This was this sugar cube with a pink solution on it. I had, what else did I have? So this was mainly what was in my childhood: poliomyelitis, tuberculosis, diphtheria, tetanus, not yet whooping cough, I think. This was not available. Rubella, measles, no. I had measles. I remember that. It was not a funny experience. Then later, this was when I was in this age. So around 62, I was 7 years old. So already with 7 years old, I had collected a lot of vaccines. But I'm still alive, as you see. This is not meant to tell you that vaccines are harmless. I also found out that in 71 and 72, I had influenza vaccine. I was not aware of this. But what it shows, all these papers with my vaccinations documented is that I was brought up in a household that was a very strong believer in vaccination. And I have no memory how my parents or the world that in those days saw vaccinations. Because immunology in the 50s and in the 60s, in the Western world, in the Western science, natural science, was at the very beginning. We had mainly bacteria in the focus, whether it was Pasteur or Behring, penicillin. It was about bacteria, not about viruses. So, and it were viruses that tried to mitigate bacteria and to make them less dangerous, and then to initiate an immune response. So these have been probably, this was a success story, let's say, of medicine in those days. I don't know whether it already was called immunology. I have no idea. But also an interesting document, when I came to Germany, I started to work there in 1988, and I had to have a health certificate and that I am not a dangerous person and no infectious disease. And it says, because there was no Europe then, so I had to have a working permit and a residence permit. And it says that I am free of contagious and disgusting illnesses. So how proud was I not to have a disgusting illness, whatever this means. So here, then I have the story when I went to Africa. I have cholera, I have yellow fever, I have what else? Oh my God. And all these have been vaccinations that made me stronger. Do you think so? I don't know. So I have to laugh because I'm a person, when it comes to vaccinations today, that I'm not very positive, also because of the case that we have a vaccine, not all of them, but many of them are interfering with the human genome, and this makes vaccinations a different story than back then. And what else do I have to this topic? Yes, I have hepatitis B. I had to have this because I was working as a doctor. And when you're working as a doctor, we have these discussions now again. You have to have vaccinations, otherwise you're not allowed to work. So I had hepatitis, 3 of them. I survived it. I don't know why, but I did. So these have been the vaccinations. Whether they protected me or not, nobody knows. I cannot remember that I had influenza. No, I don't, but this doesn't mean anything when you are young. You have no awareness of what these things are. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit about the short story of our modern immunology. When I was studying medicine, there was no more immunology. What I have in mind have been a few cells I knew. These have been macrophages, white blood cells, lymphocytes. And what we did with them is we had a microscope and we had to identify these cells. But I don't remember that I had any idea what they do in the body and how they work. So it was more about histology and to recognize the cells than asking about what is their role in physiology. I discovered we are talking a lot about the killer cells. You know, the killer cells are those cells that are meant to remove cells that are not behaving according to the rules. Cells that cause tumors, for example. And these cells remove those cells because they have the sensors to recognize them. Those cells have been mentioned the first time in 1976. So this is not a long time ago for the history of science. And then today we talk about T helper cells, we talk about CD4, CD8 cells. You might have heard about these things because they popped up with HIV, with AIDS. And these classification of T cells that are having, or which play a huge role in the immune system when it comes to the acquired immunity. These cells and this classification was published in 1986. So, and since that, I don't know whether we made a huge step forward. For the time being, we are caught up by the idea that the immune system is a defense system, even though the discussions about this are long, whether this is the fact or the case. How does the immune system differentiate between self and foreign? What is self when it comes to the immune system? Is this a question of defense? We have paradigms like the clonal selection theory that is telling us that all cells that recognize structures in my body are just sorted out and are destroyed. There are a lot of questions to be asked that cannot be answered by the immune system as a defense system. So this is another story, but I just wanted to tell you that we are in the very beginning, and that due to the corona pandemic, we are more than ever caught up in a mindset that, in my view, is stopping progress, scientific progress, because everything is seen under defense. I mean, we are at war, I know that. We are in an economical war, the West with China. We are drifting into we have war, many little war, Afghanistan, we have Ukraine. And maybe therefore, like at the turning of the century from 1900 to 2000, where the First and Second World War have been in the air, we are again in a situation where defense and war plays an important role, and maybe therefore science is more than ever caught up in defense systems. About the immune system. What is the immune system? We are confronted with defense every other day nowadays. Since this pandemic situation, it became more and more common to talk about the immune system as a defense system. And we are talking about other systems, about defense systems. It's a situation of war, it seems, we are in. Even the blood vessels, the stem cells, the DNA, everything is coined as a defense system, and this doesn't go into my head. It is difficult for me to understand the body if I talk about defense every other day. So what I want to introduce to you is my mindset. It's not only my mindset, but it is definitely my mindset, and I can't see it in a different way. The immune system is part of a complex regulatory system that makes life possible and takes care of the integrity of our body. Who or what is telling our body or us or life that we are an entity, a self, that we don't dissolve with our environment? This is a tricky question. And if you consider the immune system as a defense system, it's very hard to understand how the cells in our body respect self. This is a long story. Since many decades, science tries to understand why we have autoimmune diseases, why we have allergies, and why do we have cells that attack the self, and why do we have situations like tumors where it's the other way around. They are not attacked, they are accepted, even though if you look at them and their surface, how they behave, their receptor coating, everything, they should be removed by cells, by killer cells, or it's far more complex, but it doesn't happen. So what is wrong? Do we have the wrong bullets? Do we have the wrong guns? Or is it a question of regulation and communication in the body that doesn't work properly anymore? And I want to cut a very long story short. If you look at the body, it's always about balance. If we are out of balance, our body doesn't work. And here you see these three circles. It's a very simplified sketch, but it shows the circle that is regulating our body. And these are mainly three systems. This is the immune system, the nervous system, and the hormones. And they permanently interact. They're permanently activated. They are permanently controlling and trying to restore an equilibrium, homeostasis, as it's called in scientific words. And this is something that happens in real time, all the time. If we are if we are feeling well, if we are healthy, this system works, and it's permanently trying to control that we are not falling out of balance. So how can we understand this whole body if we talk about war? I mean, we have this metaphor now since it was 90 or 8 at the end of 1800. During the First World War was already in the air when this metaphor came into being, and it is more or less Paul Ehrlich, a very famous scientist at the beginning of natural science, who brought this up. There was one other Russian scientist, he discovered the macrophages. He saw the immune system, not called like this back in the days, but he saw our body our body as a regulation system, but he never had a chance to come up. There have been other voices far stronger, and I think if you are living in a situation where war is in the air, you tend to use metaphors that are around you, and I think we have a similar situation now. We are surrounded by wars. We have economic wars between China and the US. We have little wars, Afghanistan. Everywhere is a situation that is, it is not really funny. So maybe this is one reason why the defense metaphor is pushing itself in front and is spreading everywhere. And the pandemic didn't make it better. We are always here to talk about protecting, about getting these microbes or whatsoever away from us. We don't talk about interaction. We are not talking about an immunity that is built up due to our interaction with our environment. So this is the basic how life is working. And the immune system is right in the center of it. Of course, there are the vessels and there is the metabolic system, it's all involved. But the big systems that keep it, the body, the organism in shape, are those three systems of superregulation. And the stimuli, the signals these systems receive can be whatsoever, from inside the body, from the outside, whether it's doubt or fear or joy, whether it's bacteria, viruses, or signals from the heart or signals from our gut. This system digests, processes the signals always in the same way and doesn't care whether it's on a psychological, mental level or on a physical level. And I also am a person that thinks that we shouldn't split the mental from the physical. It works together, and the harmony that should emerge is in the hands of these three systems. This is what I wanted to say and wanted to put into my little story of immunology, which is a very, the history of immunology is short and is for the time being, I think, on a very weird path. And if we are continuing to use a metaphor like war, defense for these systems, I think we will not have any scientific progress in the real sense of the word. So this was maybe, a sad outlook, because I'm not so optimistic that this will change. It gets worse. And I wanted to tell you, before I switch to another topic, about why I started to see the system in a different way, why regulation and complexity came part of my life, and why it opened my eyes, and why I start to understand science in a very different way. And this was due to a paper. I will open it now and show you. It always takes a little bit of time. This paper I found in the beginning of the 90s, and this is my watch, which I forgot to silence, I'm sorry. It is from a very interesting scientist, Jeroen Cohen from Weizmann Institute, and he was the first person in my life who presented to me a paper that was not normal natural science. It was talking about the connections between cells, the communication between cells, about how does it happen that the body, that self exists and non-self, what's self, what is non-self, what is self, what is foreign. And I met Jeroen in 1995 in Jerusalem and his friend Henri Atlan, and they really helped me to understand the body in a different way. And since then, I'm working and thinking and receiving scientific papers in a very different way. So thanks to Jeroen and thanks to Henri, they helped me to open my eyes and to get rid of the constraints of natural science. I mean, I remember I was reading a textbook about, its name was Basic Immunology. And I can tell you, I didn't understand anything. And I thought I'm simply too stupid to understand what these people are writing. And after I got to know Jeroen and his publications and Henri Atlan and his philosophy, it was like a relief. And I hope you have experience like me as well, because it helps you to organize your knowledge, to feel free to think and not being stuck with papers in your hands and read and try to read more and more, and your knowledge doesn't increase. So, and it also gives you something in hand to judge and assess quality, and to assess quality of scientific papers is not easy. So this was my 1995. What was it? It was like angels coming from the sky. By the way, Escher's angels is one of the metaphors he uses. Into this one, beast milk. Beast milk is a complex substance, and beast milk is exactly what it is, what it does. It's regulation. It's regulating your body. It's It's not defense. It's balance. And I learned a lot with this one. I have only these ones. They are the outcome of years of reading, rereading, reorganizing my knowledge. And I hope I could give you a little insight of my life story with vaccines. So I want to do another one about this, and I want to talk a little bit about the genetics behind, because today the vaccines we have are based on an old paradigm of genetics that is prevailing until today and is enveloping, wrapping everything, and doesn't let any other thought come up. Genetics is ruling everything. So but I have to read more to talk about this. I love to do this next time. I would like to take a break now from this because it's far too absorbing. I want to ask you again, try it. It's worthwhile. If you are looking for an alternative, if you're having any kind of issues, or when you're looking for prevention, if you want to remain healthy and get an old person like me without being sick, so then try beast milk or get in touch with us. It's worthwhile, really. And but it needs a different mindset. And cheers, a different mindset. This is what I do since 30 years. I work on mindset. And I try to convince people to ask questions and always take another angle from one time to the other. So this was my Eye on Air today. Was it too confusing? Bestätigung. These ones, aren't they familiar to you? This we have again. And this one, I have another folder, you know, about my traveling through lockdown. I have this one. So I say goodbye with another little piece of paper from the one. It's also from the 60s, I think, with an old typewriter. So I hope to see you again soon. I hope I didn't bore you, because it's a little bit. And again with me next time. Enjoy your time. Stay healthy. Be active. Eat good. Move. And think about beast milk. Bye. See you again.